Greetings, gamers, and welcome to Season 5, Episode 3 of Rho Pi Gamma, the Gamers Podcast. I'm your GM Byron, and of course with me is my co-host Howard.
Greetings.
And... God, I'm tired.
Amen to that, brother.
So, I was... If it wasn't for the fact that it was at the beginning of the season, and I hate skipping an episode right there at the beginning, I almost would have said fuck it to this one. Just because it's been a hell of a week. I actually haven't done much of any gaming this week. Like, we were supposed to do a makeup game for the Epic game. I had to postpone that because I wasn't freaking prepared, although that's not for lack of trying. Just work and whatnot. So I hope... How you been doing?
Dude,
I know we were chatting beforehand, but...
Well, yeah, no, I've been doing good. Gaming-wise, it's kind of weird, actually. Gaming-wise, I had my first not bad session, but first rough session of my Shintar game.
Really?
Yeah, I added a new player. Well, one of my players was just back from a weekend event, so they were, like, really tired, and they were one of my main, like, go-getters. And then a new player came in at the same time who was great, but it threw off the chemistry of the group a little bit. Not his fault. I mean,
a group gets used to things. They get to a groove, and you throw a monkey wrench in that. It's gonna fuck anything up.
Yeah, and he did a really good job. It's just personalities, and then one of them was coming in remotely, which he's always in remotely, and then the last one did really good, but then they, with everyone else being a little off, they were a little off, and so it just sort of got one of those things where it was snowball effect, yeah. And so it wasn't nearly as fun for the players as I wanted, and I could see it by the end of the night. Like, at least two of them were barely even talking. And it's okay. I mean, if every session was awesome,
you can't be perfect all the time.
That's true.
I realize, especially considering the kind of pedestal I hold you up on, for me to say that to you, it's kind of like, you had a bad game? What the f is wrong with you? But no. Yeah. And I realize every GM's going to have it. I mean, it's inevitable. It's how you roll with it. It's how you deal with something like that. That's the mark of a good GM.
True, and I've talked with everyone. I think the next one's going to be awesome. I always do. But anyway, that's why I'm in the game. But no, it was interesting. It was like the first kind of rough session. It wasn't bad. It was just rough. Other than that,
that's not like you had like a crisis blow up in your face or something like that.
It just was rough. Then of course we have my other games. My big long. My Epic campaign is on hiatus until the end of this month because one of my players, of course, is in medical school.
Yeah, I remember you saying that.
The Wednesday night game is just rocking along. I mean,
I'm sorry to interrupt. Which night is your Shintar game? Is that the Monday nights?
Mm-hmm. Okay. Alternating Mondays, yes.
Okay, alternating Mondays. What do you alternate with?
Nothing. It's one Monday on, one Monday on, one Monday off. Because one of the players has to drive up from like another town, and it's kind of far, and so we don't want to. Okay. And sometimes we do it back to back, but only rarely. Because I got in that group, we've got one guy who has to telework because he doesn't get off, and he lives an hour away, and he doesn't get off until 10 minutes before game. Another player drives like 45 minutes from where they're in college. And so they've got classes and stuff, and sometimes they just can't make it.
Probably not much in the way of gas money on a regular basis.
And that's true, and gas prices keep rising. And then, of course, my cousin, he's got 2 kids. So, I mean, we're growing up, man. That's like one of the things about gaming, man. You just grow up, and this situation changes. It's not college anymore. We can't all just, in the middle of the night game all night.
I remember back at college, I used to be able to run 6-8 hours practically straight, and I'm lucky if I can do 4 or 5 now.
No, I agree. I mean,
it's like, damn.
We get older, times change, our interests change, everything changes. I think my role playing is deeper than it was, but I'm not nearly as I can't run nearly as long and with nearly as much energy.
Yeah.
I guess the quantity and quality thing. The older you get, with the more life experience, the more quality your game is. But you can't nearly as much.
Yeah, I would have to agree with that. As much as I actually don't like saying that, because I mean, gaming is pretty much my life. Outside of the basic necessity stuff, job, food,
It is what it is, man. It's a reality you have to deal with. Tuesday night, of course, was sucky because nothing happened.
Yeah, sorry.
No, don't apologize. I mean, I totally understand it, but I mean, I was actually kind of looking forward to it. I was
Well, you weren't the only one, which is what makes me feel even more bad. But I was expecting to have a light day at work, and to get off early so I could take care of some. And then we had a doctor's appointment that morning, so I couldn't really work on anything in the morning. We got slammed at work, so I was actually there the whole time. I'm scheduled 10 to 7. I can usually leave a little early if we're slow. I was actually there till 7.
Yeah.
And just I didn't have enough. Now, granted, like I know you weren't there, but the rest of us still hung out online. And while we were sitting there talking, I mean, I was working on stuff, so it wasn't like I was just BSing the night. I actually got my NPCs completed, so now I just need to get stuff finished up in Roll20, and then I'll be good to go for this Tuesday.
Oh, cool.
So, which I'm hoping to get some of that done tonight, actually.
Awesome. Well, and then of course I said Wednesday's Rockin' Along. That's my Star Wars Rise of the Empire game. Thursday I went into Taiki's, and it kind of, I don't know. I am playing a Shadowrun. The Thursday night Taiki's thing. It's a crapshoot. It's whatever is being played at that time. So I mean we play everything, and this happened to be Shadowrun, and the GM's a great Shadowrun 5 actually. GM's a great GM.
Okay. Not suffering from the Shadowrun curse.
No. Actually, he's the opposite. All of his missions are talking. Like we rarely shoot in his Shadowrun missions. Like they're all talking.
Oh wow.
Missions.
Oh cool.
Yeah. But the problem is that it's Shadowrun, and Shadowrun inherently builds combat characters, and I built a super combat character. Like my character that's all he does. He blows stuff up. The last 2 games, he pretty much just sat on the deck of their fishing trawler and fished and drank beers.
Dang.
Which was cool, but also like I don't know what was like the day before, like not yesterday or 2 days ago, but the Thursday game before that, like I didn't get to do much, but everyone else was on ball. This past Thursday, man, like no one in the he set up the scenario. And it's like, oh, what do y'all want to do? And like there's like 7 of us, and the rest of the group just sat around and just like stared at him. Some of them like picked at the table. Some of them were like flipping through the book. Like no one even spoke for a while. And I'm like, what the hell? Finally, I outlined the plan for us. Like as out of game, I'm like, all right, do this, you do this. And finally, I just started telling people what to do, and they just started rolling. I'm like, what the hell is wrong with you? Let's freaking roll, guys. I'm not supposed to be the combat master.
You're not supposed to be the brains of this operation.
No, not at all.
Oh, see that to me speaks that the GM really needs to understand a bit better as to who his players are.
Yeah.
And their characters. Because, like,
yes.
I mean, if he's really good with the talky stuff, that's great. That's wonderful. I actually wish more of us, including myself, was better at that. But to me, that says that he should have warned the players.
Yes.
He's like, look, I don't do combat heavy. So therefore, people could have built characters accordingly. And if he did have like a lot of people built combat heavy characters, then he needs to switch, how he runs things. I mean, honestly, if he's good with the talky, sure, have that. Just don't have that all the time.
Yep.
Actually, I think it was JD gave this a bit of advice to Liz, I think for NaNoWriMo one year. When you hit a roadblock, apparently this is a bit of a writing style, or like a trick to get past like writer's block. If you hit a writer's block, just all of a sudden write, and the door opens, and a gunman comes through and shoots at you. No explanation, just to kind of get you going again. You could do that, with especially in Shadowrun. They could be sitting there and all of a sudden, guy shows up with a gun, starts shooting at you. I mean, how many times at RMA did we start a Star Wars game? It's like, all right, everyone got their characters? All right, you're all being shot at. Roll dodge.
Well, that's the thing.
And everyone's like, wait, what? Why? It's like you don't have time for why. Roll dodge.
No, and I agree, and that's what I'm talking about. That's the bottom line. Is that is what I'm talking about. He's a great GM. It's just he's designing adventure. He's letting us build characters for which like the adventure doesn't need. So my character is superfluous to the current adventure. Now, even when the mission comes, the mission is requires a single shooter. Like, I mean, it doesn't even. So pretty much for the last two Shadowruns, my character could have just stayed on the deck of the ship sipping beers and whatever, and he's really just not. He's utilizing maybe one character out of the group for every mission, and it's a little frustrating to drive all the way to Athens to sit for 3 hours to do nothing. That's my problem with a lot of games that I'm in. That every game, everyone can't be, the center of attention. But if a player cuts time out of his day, and I'm guilty of this. I've especially done this in the Epic campaign. But typically, if I know a player for whatever, because sometimes the players just get themselves in situations despite your best efforts.
Yeah.
Where like one or the two of them, their skills aren't going to be useful. I'll often tell the player ahead of time, but like, listen, I couldn't stop them. They're stuck. They're stuck here. You're not going to be able to do much of anything. And I've actually told players, you don't even have to show up this week. Like, I mean, I'm not telling you I don't want you there. I'm just saying.
And that's great that you do that, because I know some people would be like, hey, thanks for letting me know I've got something I need to take care of, or I've been wanting to take care of, or I know some people that I do that with, it would be like, I still want to be there because they still want to see what's going on. I'm just let's just warn you ahead of time. You might be a little bored.
No, and I do that, and I'm like, especially if it's an in-person game, I'm like, hey, bring a book or something like that, because there's a good chance that you're just going to be sitting around twiddling your thumbs because these jerk-offs have decided to just go off on a tangent. But what happened is in so many games recently, and I'm sorry, it's happening in most of the games I'm playing in, is that I'll be there for 3, 4, 5 hours and do nothing. And I don't
underline meaning including Epic game.
I don't mind. I mean, I'm a dedicated gamer, but after 2 or 3 sessions, because this was the second session in which my character in this Shadowrun, because this one's an ongoing 3 or 4 game thing, I've done nothing. My character has contributed nothing to the overall goal. Nothing. I've been pretty inventive and tried to be helpful, but the bottom line is that the adventure is designed where somebody who is a heavy weapons expert is totally unnecessary. And it's like, do I roll up a new character? Do I stick it out? Because I'm pretty sure I'm going to get through this entire series and not fire a single shot.
I personally... Of course, I'm always a big component of communication. I would try talking to your GM first, and just be like, "Hey, look, dude, I made this character. I ain't doing shit. Can you work with me here, or do I need to roll up another character?" That would be my first recommendation. I had something else, and I think I fucking forgot it.
Yeah, and if honestly, if it was. If it was, something I was going to be in for a while, I would. But then on the other hand, the bottom line is that mainly because of the nature of the game, I'm probably just going to wait until the next one comes and jump in on that one. Does that make any sense?
Yeah.
So it is what it is. But yeah, if I'm often complimented, not always, but often complimented on my games that I'm able to weave in all of the players. Or all the characters, so that all the players have a chance to uniquely use their character. And I work very hard on every session, at least giving everyone a chance to interact. Now, whether they choose to do so, that's a whole different story. But I at least have the opportunity. Because if I'm gonna cut, because I have a very busy schedule. If I cut 3 or 4 hours out of my day dedicated to your game, and during that time I roll dice once and spend the rest of them just. Or not. Do you know in this game my character did not roll his dice at all?
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, I was there for 3 hours. I didn't even. I was in character. I was actually chatting in character twice, and by chatting in character, I mean I got to say a few lines twice in 3 hours, and I never rolled dice once. So. Yeah. Friday.
See, I know I can be guilty of this, but I do try to an extent sometimes. I'm not always good at it, but
Friday nothing happens. Saturday my thing's on a hiatus, and then Sunday podcasts. Although I have a bunch of I have meetings this weekend online. I have 3 different meetings. You're one of them. I have 2 other ones later on this weekend.
Interesting.
All gaming related. Different.
Oh, Shinetar stuff?
Some Shinetar stuff, another podcast. I mean, it's crazy.
Oh, cool.
Well, it's kind of like a podcast. I don't exactly know. It's like a radio show thing, podcast. I don't know what the hell it is.
If it's online, that's pretty much a podcast.
I don't even know. I don't even know what it is. I just got invited to do this thing at MomoCon. I'm going to go do it. I'm going to talk about Shinetar.
Cool.
So, and then I'm also meeting with Sean Patrick Fannin to figure out what I'm doing for AndoCon.
AndoCon?
Have I on air commented on the fact is that, guys, we have enough freaking conventions. You can stop now.
No, I don't think you've said that on air.
Oh my God, stop with the conventions. Like, we have enough. Like, we really do. This weekend is Tampa Bay or Salted Bay Con. We've got AndoCon next week. We got MomoCon the weekend before. We had this con, that con, HamaCon going on. It's like, guys, I understand that every one of you wants his own convention. I understand that. Stop. For the love of God, stop.
Well, it sounds like the area you're in is very con heavy because, like, up here where I am, you're lucky if you get a con a month, if it that, in the local area. And I'm meaning local. And when I say local, I'm meaning like within a couple of states. Because, you know, I'm up in the D.C. area. We've got a lot of states crammed, you know, next to each other. Now, granted, I may not know of a lot of them, but basically the ones I know of, I mean, we got Gen Con coming up here in a bit. Otacon's coming up. Then coming fall, there's NecoCon and AUSA, which I've actually officially bowed out of AUSA. I don't know if you saw that email or not.
But congratulations.
Yeah, and then rats jumping ship. As much as I hate to say it, just
I saw the writing on the wall. I saw the writing on the wall years ago.
Well,
but I understand.
Yeah, and freaking anyway. So, but yeah, I mean, up here there's not. It sounds like down where you are, there's a lot of conventions, which I would actually love. I would love going to a lot of them.
Yeah, but the problem is every convention, like, I've got friends, like Brian is in every convention. He staffs every convention that comes to Atlanta. Gaming or anime, he staffs every freaking one of them. And I help him on a lot of them. Actually, he's staffing security at AndoCon. I'm working for Sean Patrick Fannin at AndoCon. But I was at MomoCon last weekend. And then, it's like, after all of them, guys, I cannot... Yes, I'm getting free badges, but it's still kind of, for me, it's a hardship. It's like 45 minutes or an hour into, and then I either have to find a place to crash because I can't afford a hotel room in Atlanta. You crazy?
Yeah.
And imagine if I was trying to get one for every weekend. Like, every other weekend I'd be paying like $400 for hotels. Like, I can't do that. So either crash at a friend's house or live out.
That's when you either start trying to staff them at such a level. Now, I don't know about the conventions down there, but I know there are some, not all, but some conventions up here. If you're staffing, they'll help. You know, they'll help pay for the hotel room.
Okay, Brian was the director of games for MomoCon. He got one night free in the hotel.
Oh, jeez.
And they're going to go to 4 days next year. So,
yeah, okay.
Atlanta, so every night you're looking at about $150, $200 per night, depending upon where you go. If you want to be in the con hotel, it's going to be like $250. If you want to be like 6 blocks away and walk through the slums, you can get it for more like $150. So yeah, I freaking can't do it. And then of course with AndoCon, as I was pointing out, we still don't know what I'm supposed to. It's this huge Shinetar thing. We still don't know what's going to happen. So I'm a little curious about that. Like, I'm looking forward to it. I mean, it's going to be awesome, but, you know, we're getting really close to the wire, and I've got to, you know, perform, and it's like, hey, guys.
Kind of need to know what the hell you're supposed to be doing.
Yeah, so that's what the meeting is. It's going to be cool. Okay. And I'm looking forward to it. And I get to actually, Sean Patrick Fannin is going to be there, so I get to actually work with the creator, which is kind of nice.
Yeah, that's cool. Well, good luck to you. I mean, one way or the other.
Thank you.
But yeah, I know some. I mean, AUSA. That's one of the things I liked about AUSA was the fact that if you were on staff, you could get a hotel room, which helped me because except for actually every year I've staffed at AUSA, I've lived either 2 or 3 states away.
Yeah,
I was in North Carolina for the beginning of it, and then I was up here for the rest of it. So but I do know there are some conventions that don't either they aren't big enough to it or just it's not cost effective enough, and I understand that, but you know, yeah.
I do have one little piece of information before you talk about what you've done in gaming, and then we get into the actual meat of this thing.
Mm.
I, Howard Brandon, did so order a gaming mat, like a game mastery flip mat, from Australia.
Okay.
I couldn't find it anywhere in the world, and this dude in the Outback had a copy, and so I ordered it from Australia.
What Matt? I mean, what makes this thing so special? You had to get it from Australia.
It was the Deep Force flip mat that's out of print, and no one has them, but Australia did. Yeah, Deep Force Game Mastery flip mat. It's an awesome map. It's one of the best they ever produced, and it got bought out.
You'll need to send me a link or something because I have no clue what the hell you're talking about.
They might have them elsewhere, but I found one. I found one in Australia, and I wanted to order a flip. I wanted to order a gaming product from Australia because who else does that?
Actually, I know a person, not maybe Australia specifically, but you got to remember because of the podcast, I've got actually a couple of different connections in England. I know Liz actually RPs with someone rather regularly in Australia, so.
Well, all I have to say is that, but the thing is, it's like a $13 piece. It's a $13 game map, and I ordered it from Australia. I'm so happy. Like, you have no idea how giddy I am.
I can hear it in your voice, dude.
So, as an aside, how have things been going in your games?
Well, like I said, they really haven't been. Well, I take that back. If I don't finish it this week, next week will be the finale, the end of my Star Wars game on Sundays.
Aww.
If I don't know, I'm actually kind of glad. It's as much as I love gaming, as much as I love running, especially Star Wars D6 and this campaign, it's worn on me. Recently I've been like it needs to end. I need to end this. And I had an opportunity, but I would have killed all the player characters and kind of but I gave them a chance for success, and of course they survived. But with what I've thought up of in dealing with that, what happened, the fallout of that encounter, they're on the end game. It's like I said, if I don't finish it up, when this podcast is getting released, by next week, because one of my players reminded me the last time because he's been in this campaign before. He's like, the last time it took 2 sessions to fully end it. And I was like, yeah, you're right, but I'm hoping that, especially with the way that they've been, I've been throwing some tough cookies at them. I've been like deliberately asking like, okay, what's how many skill dice do you have in this skill? And rolling like as much, if not more. That's how I've been statting the NPCs. I've been like, how much do you have? Okay, 12 dice. All right, they're chucking 13.
Yeah,
and they're still like within 4 or 5 rounds at the most. They're coming out on top. So like with this group, unless I'm having someone that's like deliberately chucking like 20 like double what they're rolling, and even then, because you know how the dice can still screw with you.
Yep.
I'm still expecting that they'll go through this pretty quick. So unless I like really start putting on the penalties and pretty much I would have to be stacking the deck, which I don't necessarily like doing. I have it in my NPCs have a plan, they have a setup, and I don't like deliberately changing things and upping the ante just to fuck with the players. I mean, if it's viable in like if the NPCs, if I found a way legitimately the NPCs can find out what the players have planned and adjust their plans, that's one thing. But it's like, oh yeah, they have this, very specific weapon that can go through anything that you have. How the hell did they develop that? I don't know. I don't do that. So, but aside from that, because we haven't done the Epic game in a while, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Um, my other game I was running on Wednesdays has actually kind of fallen by the wayside. I've had to put the axe to it. I'm not feeling too bad about that one though, because we didn't get very far in that one. I was doing a Fate. I was trying to do a Fate game with Miri and Liz, um, testing out. It was taking a branch of Liz's comic universe, and basing it kind of similar to Marvel's Agents of Shield. They're playing secret agents dealing with people with extraordinary stuff. But we didn't get very far with it because other stuff was happening. We had to cancel a few times, and so everyone was just kind of like, man, we could go on, but I don't really, they were like, I don't really feel strongly one way or the other. I was like, well, then screw it, I'll just axe it. And actually, that's pretty much. Well, that Miri has been, for my birthday, I asked Miri for my gift from her. I asked her to run me in an RPG, because I know she's got the potential to be a great GM, and one of my recommendations to learn how to be a better GM is just to do it, is to keep doing it constantly. Just GM as much as you can, because that's how you and I learned at RMA.
Practice makes perfect.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, So I was like, run me in this game, and it took her a little while to get started, and I was afraid she might, because I had asked her to run me in another game. I gave her the plot ideas, I gave her the campaign hooks, I gave her the characters, I gave her everything, but it was Star Wars, and apparently I run so good of Star Wars games that everyone else except for maybe you gets intimidated by trying to run me in a Star Wars game, because they're like, I can't do it as well as you, or shit, I'm gonna do something and he's gonna realize I screwed something up, and and then he's gonna yell at me, and I'm like, I keep telling him like, no, do something different. I don't care. But they still get scared. So she didn't do that one. But this one it's using the Final Fantasy RPG that she found online. And I told her like what type of character I would like, and she built me a character, and we've done a few sessions so far, and that's on Mondays. And that's going well so far. I mean, we're just the momentum's just getting started, so I'm hoping that it doesn't stall out before we really get more into it.
Cool.
But yeah, that is pretty much all in the actual gaming I'm doing. I'm still working on on my personal project. I actually got my well, I don't remember how much I've actually told about that. So anyway, I've made some progress, which I can tell you about later. I don't remember how much I've said on the podcast yet. I think I've been waiting until I actually have something to tell, something to fully tell. So, but I've been making progress on that. Yeah, that's about it. Not much going on with me, unfortunately.
All right, well, shall we get on to the main topic?
Sure. What is it?
The rule of cool.
Yes, the rule of cool. What the hell is this?
I was introduced to this in the Shine Tower forums sometime late last year, and it has become one of the banes of my existence.
Uh-oh.
Here's a rule of cool, and it's a gaming term apparently.
Okay.
And apparently other people had heard about that. Maybe it's a UK thing. I don't know. If you're from the UK and it is like the rule of cool is something that you guys use over on the other side of the pond, let us know, because like this is some douchebaggery. Anyway.
Uh-oh.
No, the rule of cool is this. If it is cool, whatever it may be, it is acceptable in your game.
Oh God, no.
It's the ooh shiny on crack, meaning that as long as it's cool, you can do it. So let's say I'm doing a fantasy RP Pathfinder, and I really think it's cool for my orc to have a tank. Go ahead and do it. Why? Because it's cool. The rule of cool. No matter what the thematic fabric of the universe, no matter what the stats say, no matter what type of character you're playing, what universe you're playing in, what game system or game setting you're playing in, as long as whatever you want to do is cool, the GM should just run with it, regardless of theme, regardless of setting, regardless of stats. As long as it's cool, go with it.
I can hear JD squeeing from here about frickin' rocket-propelled chainsaws.
Okay,
I think
qualify that one.
So what?
Rocket-propelled chainsaws? What the hell?
JD has such a hard-on he's been trying. It's become a running gag between him and me now, thankfully, because I finally like sat his ass down and went, dude, this is why it's not happening. Da 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 da. Now he's done his research and come back and is like, tried to usurp some of my reasonings, but he's not really in any game I play that I run right at the moment now either. So it's just kind of become a running gag. But he's just had this hard on. He's just like, I think it would be cool to have a rocket-propelled chainsaw, and I'm like, why? That is the most. First and foremost, it's like it's not aerodynamic. You've got this part because the limited knowledge of physics, I have enough of it. So I was like, you've got this problem, this problem, this problem, this problem, and I was like, bottom line, it's inefficient. It's like, get a mortar. You're gonna do as much, if not more, damage more efficiently. It's gonna be more cost effective. But he was just like, no, I mean, if you put a strong enough engine behind it, it doesn't matter, it will fly, and da da da. I was like, but it's going to be inaccurate as hell. And he and I just have gone back and forth on this constantly. And like I said, I mean, it's become a gag now, but originally he was like seriously like trying to work out a way to do this, and in my games, because I usually have the rule, it's like if you can work it out in game, then fine. But I looked at him as soon as I figured out what he was trying to do. I was like, no. He's like, oh, why not? It'd be cool. And I'm just like,
rule of cool. Right
hell
there.
no. Hell no.
That's what I'm talking about.
I think you've actually touched on something about similar to this last season. About how some GMs are just like, you know what, hey, screw it, whatever. If it's cool, go with it. But we just didn't know it had a name for it.
Yep. Yeah, the problem was in Shintar, I've been in discussions, and it mushrooms, where we're talking about, because, in Shintar you have builder technology, and builder technology is the most advanced technology in Shintar. It's using a blend of magic. It's kind of like cyberpunk, but it's crystal punk. It's
cyberpunk, but on the other end of the spectrum with magic instead.
It's high magic. Anyway, but the bottom line is, and then people, start taking it, and then it quickly degenerates into, flying airships, mounted with like turbo lasers and, submarines that are invisible, and it's just. And my problem is this, when I'm playing, and actually, funny you should mention this, because this bleeds into another reason why I have such an issue with, as I've explained to you, I have an issue with Edge of the Empire, the new Star Wars, game system, is that, when I play Dresden Files, right? Mm-hmm. Dresden Files has it's based off of a book series.
Yep.
It has the magic functions a certain way. There's a certain limit to the magical abilities. There's a certain flavor to the magical abilities. There's a certain blend of magic and real technology.
Or lack thereof, in Dresden. Magic and technology don't like to mix with each other.
Well, true. And there you go. That's a perfect example. So if someone comes in and they're like, I want to have this, super weapon, which is a perfect fusion of magic and technology, and I would be like, well, that would be great in, let's say, Shadowrun, but it's just not going to work here. And then they throw a fit because they're like, well, it's cool, I want it. And it's like,
I want $1 million. I think it would be cool to have $1 million. I'm not getting it anytime soon.
And as a GM, and players, some players take this stuff to heart. They really get upset because they're like, but it would be cool. And I'm like, yeah, but it's not thematically appropriate to the game. And that's something that I have a hard time because, like, for example, when I build characters, I don't build characters to min-max. I don't munchkin. I'm not a gamist or a power gamer. I build characters and scenarios and NPCs, for that matter, to be thematically appropriate to the universe.
Right.
And actually,
well, I was going to say, taking Dresden, because you brought it up as an example, there was Liz was actually going to run a Fate Dresden game, and I had a character idea. I thought it would be really cool to do it, but I kept, but I had a certain idea. It was actually, I was basing it off of, I wanted to have a character that had magic that worked similar to how magic worked in the old Nintendo GameCube game Eternal Darkness. You had a select number of spells, but they each did a certain thing. You had runes. You had to figure out how to combine them to make the spells and whatnot. So I was just like, okay, well, if I build a character like this, I should be able to do some, some of those. But I worked with Liz, and she was like, okay, as I'm reading, she's like, as I'm reading this isn't going to work. Or she was like, she was like, it doesn't quite work that way. And the more I kept hearing that, it doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way. After a while, I was like, you know what, this character is not going to work. It's not compatible with the way, with the way magic works in the Dresden verse. This character idea isn't going to work the way I wanted it to. So I scrapped it. I didn't throw a fit. I was just like, you know what, this ain't going to work. I have a backup plan. I had a backup character. I busted him out. Cool.
That is exactly what I'm talking. Now you do a lot of crossover stuff. I don't, but
Yes,
crossover fusion stuff is fine. But if someone's that is a perfect example of what I'm talking about. Because I'm doing Star Wars, and people are like, well, although there is officially steampunk in Star Wars, kind of.
Yes,
as we pointed out.
Blatantly pointed out during one of the AUSAs, you rat bastard.
But but the point is there are certain limitations inherent in the universe. If you're playing a Pathfinder high magic setting, running around with an AK-47.
There was a gap there. I wasn't hearing anything, so you might want to start again. Yeah,
no,
after I called you rat bastard, you went silent.
Oh, okay.
No. I was almost a little worried. I was like, oh shit.
No. So if you're playing in a Pathfinder type game, like there's rules inherent to a system. So you're playing a Pathfinder medieval high magic type game. You can't run around with an AK-47. You can't magically alchemically create a stock based tubular slug throwing device that fires them at rapid succession and is in fact an AK-40. And that's the problem I have, is because in situations, because people have a hard time staying true to a particular setting, and it's a game balance thing. It's another game balance thing, because if I give your dude so let's say we're playing Pathfinder, since that's something that a lot of people understand.
Yeah.
And let's say I give you an AK-47, so the orc wants a tank. Well, now the rogue wants a flying zeppelin, and now the paladin wants a spaceship. And it's like, after a while it becomes, there's a game balance issue, because the reason, like for example Dresden, the reason the magic works a certain way is that within Dresden there's a certain internal efficacy, in the sense that within the universe it was created by the author, he created magic to work a certain way, to have certain limitations, to give his characters, to present difficulties to his characters. He didn't want one thing to become totally overpowered. He created balance within his world. When you're playing in a Dresden RPG, you need to stay true to that balance, because when you start screwing around with the balance of the world, then you start breaking things. And what I find, and here's the thing, what I've found in Savage World settings in general, and in Shinetar in specific, because I've been playing it more of late. When you start following the rule of cool, and this has happened to you because we've talked about it in other podcasts.
Mm-hmm.
You're like, well, this will be cool, so I'm going to give it to my players. And then all of a sudden you find out that your players, being what they are, find a way of using it in a way you didn't expect, and then completely throwing off the balance of the world.
Yep.
And there's the problem. Just because something's cool doesn't mean that it should fly, because there are game balancing issues. And that's what I keep suggesting to people in the Shinetar forums, and suggesting to people at convention, and suggesting to the whiny players in my games. I'm like, yeah, that's a really cool idea, but it doesn't work in the setting A. And B, if I give that to you, it's going to create this situation in which in this instance it is way overpowered to the settings, and it will eventually detract from the game. Why? When you play a video game with cheat codes on, the game is less fun. It's
to some people. Some people actually do get a kick out of that
for a short period of time.
Yeah,
but you blow through the game so fast.
Yeah, that's the thing. Is after a while you've beaten the game and you're done.
Exactly, and that's what happens in a role playing game. You go by the rule of cool. You demand these shinies. When you get them, you break the world, and you love breaking the GM's worlds. You've just beaten the GM. Now what?
Yep. Especially considering the GM is the one running the game. Is the one leading you through this. So once you beat his ass, and that's the thing, a lot of people some people, granted, I don't think this mentality has. I think it's dying, which is good. But I remember when I first got into RPGs, there was the strong mentality of the GM versus the players.
Yeah.
Like it was the player's job to beat the GM, and it was the GM's job to kill the players. And no,
It's a cooperative story.
yeah, because I mean, especially with the GM, with as much power as the GM has, I mean, for all intents and purposes, the GM is God when it comes to the game you're in, the world you're running. So yeah, most people don't they abuse the heck out of that. And the rule of cool is almost flipping the table. It's putting it into the players to just be able to to wield whatever, break it, and cause the GM a freaking living headache.
Yeah, actually, I hate to say it, that having experienced this in games, on forums, and just in discussions, like, I have a hard time, like, not being draconic against it now that I've seen the mentality, because it's so caustic to games, this concept of the rule of cool. It's a bad idea. It's just bad gaming.
Yeah.
But I have to catch myself to not dismiss things outright just because, does that make any sense? Like, I'm having to prevent myself from becoming too concerned with the rule of cool that I stop players from doing. And actually, give you an example. I was doing a thing for my Shinetar game, and one of my players, we were using the Day in the Life supplement, which is actually really cool. We actually ought to talk about that like next time.
Okay.
It's a cool mechanic. Anyway, but they're doing the Day in Life thing, and it creates plot hooks. And one of the plot hooks was my characters and players, and basically he failed on a series of rolls for resources, ended up getting indebted to the local smith. He had to work there, and there was a plot hook, so he came up with a line, and he immediately, because some players are copacetic with like accepting bad things, and some players just don't want bad things ever to happen to their characters, and so they'll always try to reason or justify it out that their player wasn't at fault, or that bad things don't happen. They get upset if you take away their toys.
Yeah.
And and so I said that, okay, you failed this role, so during the time you were supposed to be helping the smith, something bad actually happened. You end up not doing the job, and now you're indebted to the smith. Well, the player came back to me and was like, okay, well that's fine, but it wasn't my fault. The smith was setting me up, so I can turn the tables on him and destroy. And it's like, wait,
No.
that completely invalidates the plot hook. And I immediately, and it's the rule of cool thing where he's like, I'm going to be able to find out that the smith is evil, and I'm like, but this is a major NPC in my game, and so I immediately said no, because because I'm in the back of my mind, I'm like, here we go again.
Yep.
And then the player actually like turned off, like he's like, oh, and like that's it, that was it for him. So I actually wrestled with it for like 2 weeks, and finally I'm like, no, I need to compromise. So I actually called him up. I'm like, all right, how about this? Yes, the ore you were getting was in fact inferior ore. Yes, you were set up, but not by the smith.
Yeah, but not by the smith, by someone else.
He doesn't know about it, and by bringing this to his attention, by revealing this, not only do you redeem yourself in the eyes of the smith, but also it gives you a plot hook to bring the other players in to make this a separate investigation, because that's what they are. They're basically cops.
Okay.
And he's like, oh, that's a cool idea. We'll run with that. But the first thought was, the players, it doesn't have to be just a toy. It also can be, the players, want to. The rule of cool can also be they want to destroy the big baddie by, they're like, well, I'm gonna pull out this one block and it's gonna collapse your entire world.
Yeah.
And because I'm a player character, I get to do it because what I say goes. It's my story. I can do whatever the hell I want. It's like sometimes no, you can't just find Darth Vader. No, you can't find the Emperor's secret stash of super weapons and pick up cloaking devices and clones just because you read it in a book.
Yeah.
Well, I know where it is. I've read the book. I know how to find it. It's
you know where it is. Your character does not. That is metagaming.
And it brings, but these are the rules. These are the problems with the rules of cool, because the rules of cool violate metagaming rules. They violate all kinds of crazy stuff, and yet a lot of players, or players find a I've had a player who he was a gamist. He was a power gamer. He scoured the Star Wars Sagas books, found the one power that he could abuse, and then it was basically a force choke. It's a force grip or whatever. And technically,
that's right, because you said in Epic Game it didn't give you a dark side point anymore.
Right.
Yeah,
and so he's like, okay, it doesn't give me a dark side point, so I can use this on everybody. And I'm like, yes, but that's not thematically appropriate to Star Wars. I can do it. It says it. I'm like, it doesn't necessarily give you a dark side point, so it's not one that automatically gives you a dark side point. But if you use it aggressively, it does, because that's thematic to you. No, it's not. It says it's not a dark side. I can do it as much as I want. No. What this saying is that it's not instantly a dark side point like rage or something like that, but it's still, anything can be dark side if you. No, it doesn't. It is not a dark side power. I can use it to kill people. I'm a Jedi. I'm going to do that. And that's it. And the game ended.
Yep.
Because of the rule of cool. Because he found something cool that broke the thematic. Even though I was trying to explain that there are thematic rules and there are thematic game system rules, and then there are actually game mechanic rules, and they're both necessary to running a game. And a lot of players, especially gamists and power gamers, that if it doesn't say it in the stats of the power or the stats of the rule, that they can get away with it.
Yep.
So, and this is just one of those things that GMs need to worry about. Not worry about, but they need to be aware of.
Yeah, they need to be mindful of. Because, I mean, like you said, I mean, the fear of it got to you so much that you just banhammered something instantly that a player, was getting, an idea that the player was getting for it. And I'm glad to hear that you thought about it and went back and was like, here, how about this? Which is similar, actually, I think, to how I would have done it. Because if someone's like, I'm going to find out that, it's such and such, I'm like, no, you're not. Because it wasn't. But, if they went back, it's like, but if they came to me, it's like, well, is there some way we can turn this? Then I would have been like, maybe, give it some thought. So, but, I mean, you got so fearful of it, which still is, like, causing some circuits in my head to freaking fizz hearing you fearful of something. Again, that whole pedestal I put you up on.
No. The problem is these are game breaking.
Yeah.
And if players are not willing to compromise, and my problem is I've had players that are unwilling to compromise.
Yeah, like the one with the dark side point or the dark side power.
Then it becomes an issue. And yes, I've had a game die because of this. Like, seriously, we've already talked about getting gun shy about stuff in games. We have. We've talked about, like, if you see conflicts between your players, you've had enough games that had this happen that the minute you see that, you're going to stop that game and, like, go, whoa, why? Once bitten, twice shy, right?
Yep. Well, I was going to say, I had a game, I know I've talked about it before, that blew up, I mean, in the span, literally, in under 2 minutes.
Exactly. So
it went from running fine to completely exploded, and I didn't have enough time to react.
And so I have had a game just die because gamists or power gamers refuse to give up their shiny, and so the minute I see that, then I'm gun shy. I'm really gun shy when people come up to me. It's like, okay, I found this loophole in the rules that gives me this power that's entirely broken, and I'd like to use it in a way that it was not intended in order to destroy the fabric of the game and gain an unfair advantage over the other players, the NPCs. Do you mind? Well, actually, yes, I do. So, it's just the whole point of this podcast is to help players and GMs, overcome issues and for us to talk about things that we have run across that they might run across and how best to deal with it. Now, in one game, I told the guy, I'm sorry, that's, I tried to explain to him that in Star Wars universe that even light side powers can be used for dark side purposes, and just because it doesn't have the dark side descriptor doesn't mean it can be unilaterally used in all circumstances.
I actually wonder if that's something that they cleared up in an errata or not. Have you looked into that just out of curiosity?
I haven't looked up the errata for that specific power because no one uses it anymore. Because I have after that, no. Basically, now when people get into my games, the first thing I say is like, I want to play a Jedi, and I sit them and say, let's talk about this, son.
I want to play a Jedi. It's like, oh, child, come.
No, seriously, you playing Jedi in my games now, you get a freaking disclaimer. Like, I'm like, listen, I'm going to hurt you. You are not going to enjoy playing this character when I'm done with you. I'm telling you right now, because if you say I'm playing the Jedi, I'm going to hold your feet to the fire. So now it's not so much of an issue, is because I'm like, are you really want to play a Jedi? Like, yeah. I'm like, okay. 3 games into, like, this sucks.
Which, by the way, I still do want to have a Jedi game with you running at some point.
We need to have a disclaimer later. But anyway, but no. So some game, but that game had to end. He refused to recognize that there were other limitations other than mechanical stat limitations, so the game died. It just ended because I as a GM refused to allow him to continue using basically I continued to allow him to use a statistical or stat argument, a sort of a red herring, not a red herring, but sort of try to use a loophole in order to abuse a power in Star Wars that would clearly be gaining him dark side points. I just I'm not going to play this game with you. I'm sorry. And sometimes as a GM you have to do that. Like, honestly, it's rough. Sometimes you just have to let it go, and it hurts.
Yeah.
Sometimes you can talk with the players like I did, and some of them will give up the shinies, although some of them will throw a fit like you're saying, JD.
Yeah.
And then some of them, are just copacetic. They're like, oh, okay, I could see how that could be problematic, and they just go on with their lives, and those are the players we dream for.
Yeah. Now, from the player's perspective of this, because I do want, because so far we've you and I both being GMs 9 times out of 10 we're talking about the pitfalls of this from the GM's perspective. I want to actually touch on the player side of this a bit. From the player side, obviously the whole point of playing in an RPG is to have fun, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So if you players, if you think that you have an idea that would be really cool, bring it up to the GM aside.
Yes.
Not in the middle of the game. Bring it up to him aside. It's like, hey, I've got this idea. I think it would be really cool. And lay it out. And if the GM says no, then write it down. Save it. Wait for another game.
Yes. If you want a tank,
because if the GM is like, like the whole tank, it's like, I want a tank in a fantasy setting. Not gonna happen. Write it down. Wait until you're playing in a game that's not fantasy, or maybe with another GM, because you might find a different GM that has a fantasy setting where he's got tanks. In which case, be like, I want a tank. He'd be like, you're gonna have to work for it, but cool. Or be like, here. But if it doesn't work, I mean, I'm not saying take the GM 100% face value at his word. As much as, like, in the moment I might actually go against this, but I do actually like it when people do this. Challenge the GM a little. And just be, if the GM just goes, no, with no explanation, just be like, why not? Ask. And if the GM is just like, I don't want it in my game, then, you know what? At which point, if the GM is just flat out like, I don't want it in my game, you ain't getting it. And if you throw a fit, you're gonna ruin the fun for everyone else. Or, hey, you know what? Maybe then, that's a sign that you and that GM aren't jiving well. Maybe you got to pull out of that game and find a different GM.
Yeah. That's perfectly acceptable.
But if the GM is like, no, because of this, and this, and if you've got arguments for some of them, by all means, because like I said with JD, I originally I just told him no, but then he pestered me for reasons, and I gave him reasons because I sat there and thought about it a bit, and I was like, well, this, and this. He actually went and started finding like ways around that, ways around some of them. He's like, well, you said this, well, what about this, this, and basically, bottom line, it became to the point of, dude, no, because it is too even in a Star Wars game, in my opinion, it was too ridiculous of an idea to really fit well.
Yeah.
So I don't think I ever actually told him that, but I think he got the idea. but yeah, so players, I mean, if you come up with an idea, because we're not saying GMs should be shooting down everything.
True.
And players should definitely fight for what they want. But players have got to understand that, first and foremost, there is more going on in the GM's head than the players are aware of.
Yes.
because I've had to do that too. Someone's been like, I really want to do this, and I'm like, if you do that, that is going to screw so badly something that's going on that you have no idea what it is. So I'd be like, I want this. I'm like, not happening. And I've actually had to say, and they're like, I was like, why? I was like, because of something you don't know that's going on in the universe. And in which case they were like, oh, because that was almost intrigue for them. They were like, oh, now I want to find out why. I was like, oh, you will. Yeah. They're like, okay, cool, and then they'll sit back because I almost got to I almost lead them on a different path. They're like, I want to go this way. I'm like, no, because of this. And I'm like, oh, really? So then they went, to find out. I gave them a different carrot. But players have just got to keep in mind that GMs have got more going on that they're aware of. So when the GM says no, it might be for something that you don't know, or the GM can't tell you without spoiling something of what's going on in the game. So players just need to be mindful of that. They need to keep that in mind as that is something that is a possibility.
Yeah, and I agree with you. Everything you said, as a matter of fact. And again, like, we typically agree. No, yeah. with my player and my Shrine Tower game, I said no because it would mess up the fabric of the town, and it would have much deeper ramifications that he didn't understand. But then when I thought about it, I'm like, wait a minute, but that was kind of dick move, being like, just no. So I thought about it, and I created a way for I modified the idea so that he still got the net result that he wanted, but without causing problems in the game world. And I think that's the mark of of a good GM and a good player is that you're willing to work together. And he seemed turned on by the idea. But again, rule of cool, people. Just because it's cool doesn't mean it's a good idea.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's another thing. It's an explosion can be cool.
Very cool.
But then you got to deal with the fallout.
Yes. Actually,
deal with a mess.
No. Can I throw out a final point
about
it?
Go.
Speaking of rule of cool. So and Fallout, because actually it triggered something. So in the Wednesday night campaign about last year, they were in a Star Wars game in which they were in a fortress palace thing, run down. But anyway, it had a fusion reactor, and the Empire was coming in. And they thought it'd be a great idea to set the thing to go critical to kill all. They were going to escape, they booby trap it, so that when the Empire came in, it would overload and blow up the fusion reactor. It was really cool.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it was a nuclear fusion reactor.
Oh.
And set it to go critical. Speaking of Fallout, they wiped out. They're the good guys, but they wiped out. They blew up a nuclear bomb on this mountainside, and there were villages and towns nearby. They actually killed an entire town. They nuked an entire town of allies, and the fallout irradiated an entire area. And the player characters are responsible. And the Empire used the PR from that event to sway the world to the Empire side. This was during the rise of the Empire.
Yep.
It was a cool idea, but the fallout was quite literally horrible. That's the way you said it. You said you didn't know what about the fallout. I'm like, hey, here's a
great example.
And I let them do it. Now that's in the game, and I let them get away with it because I'm like, fine. But it's a perfect illustration of the rule cool. Just because it's cool doesn't mean the resulting explosion and fallout isn't going to screw you in the end.
Yeah, and that's also another thing that players do have to kind of keep in mind, because some GMs, going back to the whole GM versus player, player versus GM mentality, some GMs might let the rule of cool happen, but then deliberately augment their game to go against whatever. It's like, I think it'd be really cool to have a tank. All right, fine. And the GM sitting there thinking, well, I think it'd be really cool if the orcs had anti-tank guns. Yeah. Or I think it'd be really cool to have a tank. Well, I think it'd be really cool if the orcs had flew A-10 warthogs.
No,
depleted uranium rounds. I mean, so
if it came to it, and someone I'm going to leave if I don't get a tank, I'd be like, cool, fine. And I would totally let them have a tank. There'd be no fuel for the tank in this world, but they'd have a tank.
Yeah, actually, that's AD&D. There's a cursed item. Are you familiar with the Robe of Useful Items?
No.
Because it's actually still in Pathfinder. Okay, the Robe of Useful Items has a couple of items that are standard on each of them, and then you roll to see what other items. So basically what it is, it looks like a normal robe or cloak, but when you put it on, you see little patches on it that are in the shape of certain things. And you can take the patches off and throw them and they become whatever that item is. So like there's a patch of a ladder, you pull the patch off, throw it, and all of a sudden you have a ladder. And it's all, there's like holes, doors, ladders, potions of healing, bags of gems. I mean, there's all this stuff. However, in AD&D, there is a cursed item, the robe of useless items, and one of which is a futuristic Buck Rogers ray gun that does like 5d 100 points of damage. Batteries not included.
Yep. See? That's what I'm talking about.
I think it'd be really cool to have a tank. All right, you have a tank. How are you getting it anywhere? Well, I turn it on. It don't start. What? No fuel.
No fuel. No ammo.
Gasoline hasn't been refined or invented yet.
And there's no ammunition. There's no black powder. There's no cordite. Nothing.
Nope.
But you have a tank.
You now have the beginnings of a fortress. Because it ain't going anywhere.
Oh my god, dude, that's so awesome. Anyway, but no.
Yeah, bottom line, rule of cool sounds like just don't. Just don't. I mean, like I said, if you have a really cool idea, go and talk to your GM about it. But if they say no, maybe push a little. But if the GM finally puts his foot down, you know what? You're the one that agreed to play in his game. So that includes you've got to agree to his rulings. And like I mean, everyone knows I try to be as diplomatic as possible, but sometimes I've had to just fucking put my foot down.
Do you know what the definition of tact is?
No.
Telling someone to go to hell in such a way that they enjoy the trip.
Awesome.
So that's it for me. That's
yeah, that's to say, I think we've rambled on enough. So if you have any ideas, suggestions, comments, concerns, what the fucks, whatever, you can email us, post on the blog, put the comments on the YouTube. You can tweet us. I need to get back to checking the Ropai Twitter right now.
Wait,
on my phone.
Seriously, like,
what?
I need. Can you link that stupid Twitter account so I can? I don't even have Twitter, but I'd like to look.
Yeah, I can. If you want, yeah, sure. We'll do this once we stop here. I'll give you the info.
And also link to. I'm looking up Ropai Gamma on YouTube, and I'm having trouble finding it.
Yeah, I need to. Really? Like at all?
I'm looking for it.
Try Ropai Gamma season. Because if that is an issue, then that's obviously something we need to address.
I found it. It's not the top one. Why is it not the top one?
Probably because we're brand new.
I am going to subscribe to this channel.
You're subscribing to a channel that you're a part of. That's brilliant.
Well, that way it'll show up in my feed.
Yeah, that's true. So, and you all should subscribe too. Dang it.
There you go.
We're sitting here airing out our own ignorance and technical difficulties.
Hey. I threw that plug just for you.
Yeah. Well, thank you, I suppose. Anyway, we do love to hear from you all, so please give us feedback so we know that we're, even if you're telling us that we're fucking up, because, hey, the feedback's feedback. I'd like to know when I'm fucking up, because if no one tells me, then I don't know. So, anyway, thank you for joining us this week. Hopefully you'll join us next week. I have been your GM Byron.
I have been your co-host Howard.
You did that on purpose.
No, really not. I'm tired.
No, you were about ready to be cohort.
Oh, no, it's a hoe. Yes.
Coho.
It's not a whore, it's a hoe.
Oh, just remember. Oh, God, we're punch drunk. Just remember the motto of Ropai Gamma is roll high,
play well, die hard.
Okay, this needs to end.